Hello everyone, welcome to Vert Mode. I'm excited to give you a sneak peek at our new course, Mastering Human Anatomy for 3D Artists. In this course, we dive deep into the captivating world of human anatomy, exploring techniques used by master artists throughout history to create anatomically accurate models. If you want to follow along with this demonstration, sign up for our emailing list to receive access to the image planes I'm using right now. And if you're ready to take your skills to the next level, enroll in the full course on Udemy. Links to our emailing list and Udemy page can be found in the video description. Let's get started.
All right, so now that we have this set up, we're going to add in something called a eye socket. I think that's self-explanatory, but it's going to be the socket the eye goes into. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by selecting these two faces here on either side of the head. We're going to move into this front view and we're going to perform an extrude. And this time I'm going to use the extrude tool. So I'm going to click this. And in the extrude tool, we are going to use a special functionality here called offset. Now, if you aren't familiar with offset, what it does is basically scales a face inward, but maintains its flatness. So what we're going to do is basically create another topological structure for us to model on top of. That's the purpose. Now, we want to get this close to the size of the eyeball. So we want to scale them down until they're slightly bigger than the eye in the front view using this offset. So I'll just click this and drag. And you might notice, hey, we get there pretty quick on one part, but not the others. So we do need to come in here and adjust these. So we'll just come into the vertex mode. What I like to do sometimes is just work this in perspective, but look at it in the front view. It's just easier to select and just kind of get these placed. So these will be on either side, and then we're going to bring this down here. Remember, these are going to be slightly bigger than the eye. So you'll notice I'm going kind of around the eyelids there. And it's okay if this isn't perfect. You know, we're adjusting things, and if I'm going to be honest, if there's one area that looks funky on a base mesh, it tends to be the head. Heads we want to keep as blank canvases. They are one of the key identifying points humans use for characters. So generally speaking, it's good if they're relatively nondescript. Now, one thing I am noticing is in the orthographic view, it is not matching too closely to the eye placement in terms of depth. I feel like this here's really too far out here. That's something I might correct now. Let me just check. I'm going to explore that really quick if bringing this forward would be a good idea. Might be. It's one of those things that's really hard to gauge at this level of resolution with polygons. But I do think bringing that brow ridge forward now would be a good idea to have more of a ledge rather than an angle. And I might do the same thing down here. Tracing that bone a little bit better. So, like I said, you're going to notice things as you go that you are going to decide, hey, this looks a little bit funny. Let's make this look better. And I think that was one of those areas for me, just getting a little bit more of that plane of the face there. Hopefully I don't regret that, but hey, it's there now. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to grab those two internal faces we just made, and we're going to extrude these again to form what is essentially going to be the eyelid. So we're going to extrude and just offset. These shouldn't be super thick. They're going to represent the eyelid, so something like that should be fine. And with those in place, we're just going to switch to selecting the outer ones here. We're going to extrude these in, and make sure you pull them out this time instead of an offset, and essentially create an eyelid shape. So that's going to give us the top eyelid and the bottom eyelid for this eye. Now, we're not going to shape those quite yet because we need to create the eye cavity or eye socket here, which is going to be done with these two faces. And the way we do those is we're going to select these and essentially extrude them back to create a little hole that an eye will go in. So we can hit the extrude button, scale them back. And I like to do this from the inside a little bit here. Basically how it goes is the first extrusion back, you're going to make a little bit bigger. So that way it widens up as it goes into here. And you may have noticed I said the first extrusion. We're going to extrude again. I'm going to hit G to repeat last command. We can pull this out. And this one's going to get even wider to be the width of essentially the eyeball. It doesn't have to be, but yeah, it helps. And then we're going to extrude once more And this one we can actually taper to be the backside of the eye. So these are going to be what we call eye sockets, eye cavities, sometimes referred to as eye pouches. And the idea is when we press 3, you'll see that we get a little socket there that we can stick an eyeball in for a 3D character. All right, so that is going to get that set up there so that we have that in place. You can also delete the backside of those faces if you want to. I tend to like to just keep mine there. From a game perspective, a lot of the times you just collapse these into triangles later. Film, sometimes they delete it, but nowadays with how fast polygons render, it really doesn't hurt to keep them. So, why not? Now, it can be useful if we have something to shape around when it comes to the eye. This is not our final eye form. I do want to tell you that now. We are going to add in more detail to the eye. I would suggest saving at this stage, because if you manage to get this far, it is a few steps. But we will be adding a few more edge loops to make the eye work. I do, however, like to get eyes in early, if possible. That way I can kind of gauge their placement and how the eyelid wraps around them. Now, to do this, I'm just going to create a display layer for our torso so far. Just place it on one of these and hide it. And I'm going to create a polygon sphere. So I'm just going to create a sphere here, and this is going to represent our eyeball. Now, this document's still in feet, so this is a 1 foot square, which is pretty intense. One thing I like to do with eyeballs is just rotate these forward 90 degrees so that we see this circle point. Looks a bit like an eyeball. I'm going to scale this down and place this here where the eyeball will go. And essentially the eyeball is the size of the eye socket, if you're not aware. And we're just going to move that forward to match right about there. So that is our little eyeball. You can duplicate this if you want. You can mirror it if you want. With mirror set to world, if you go to mesh mirror, it will actually mirror across in the world just fine. And we can just name this eye shape. And I will give these a display layer and just name this eye shape and save. We can do an _L. You can't name things the same thing. My bad. And we can place this here. Yes, that looks horrendous. But it mainly looks horrendous because of our character model, not because of the eye. There's nothing wrong with it. We do want to check the placement, just make sure it's not too far forward. It might be. I think right about there is pretty close. It's a low resolution concept, so we can't really get anything too accurate. But with that in place, I can set that layer to a reference, so I can't select the eyes, and I can come in here and I can start to shape the eye edges here to more accurately represent the eye. And that's the important thing of why I added this eye in here, because like I said, these wrap around the eyeball. So this can really help us shape the eye socket a bit better and get the correct depths going for various things. In this particular instance, it's kind of a matter of width and depth to kind of get this close. And the main thing is I want to get this close. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be the most accurate thing in the world at this stage. As long as it's close, that's the main thing I need for this eye currently. And the top part's actually pretty accurate. One thing I am noticing is this inner one I added. I am going to want to scale this a bit more, potentially, for this interior eye. That's kind of the inner eyelid, if that makes sense. I'm not really liking how it's looking in relationship to the bottom here. For some reason, I feel like it's very close to it. Didn't quite give me that bottom area look I was going for. Well, that's okay. Once again, those are areas that we're really going to get a lot of sculpting in. So it's not the biggest deal if it doesn't match up right away. But can be nice to get these fairly close. You notice I am digging into the sphere a little bit. I'm anticipating adding in some central volume to this, and these eyelids are actually going to change a lot. So the main thing is just kind of placement in relationship to the eye. With something like this, you can see that we can see the corner of the eyelid a little bit better. So based on our reference, this needs to come forward a bit. And you don't have to match the reference perfectly. You know, remember the reference does have anatomy detail sculpted in. And you can also see the eyelid, how far it's coming down on the eye. That's something we can experiment with as we go. I think as we add things in later, we'll get a better feel for that. But we can start to pull these forward a bit to match up with our concept better. And you'll see I'm just pulling down that middle face to create that nice eye shape. And then we can do the same on the front here. Kind of pull this up and then bring our eye out here to match. And we start to get that nice look of the eyelid and our character having eyes. If we press 3, ooh, there you go. Looks like some early human art. Still low resolution here, but hopefully that gives you an idea on how to get the eye in there. To get started, I am going to bring in the sides of these a little bit to get a more appealing volume going to these. Make sure you maintain your planarity here, keeping these kind of flat with each other where possible. And we could even play around with this in the front view. I'll turn off this eye if we can kind of see the corners of where these go. We can't, so not a big deal, but that will give us a start. Okay, so we still have quite a bit more to go. I can pull this out, though, which is kind of nice now that we have those center extrusions. We can get that upper brow a little bit more well-defined. And we could even do it on the bottom, but I don't think we need to. However, here, it can be kind of nice to exaggerate that brow ridge socket that this sits inside of. And gives us a better look overall. Get that to kind of gradually slope a bit more. Okay, so that is going to add in the eye base structure. It's going to add in our eye cavity structure, like you see here. And you can even put in some eyeballs if you want for that. Okay, so as a challenge, what I want you to do is go ahead and add in the topology for the eye structure. Get that in there as good as possible. Adjust it if you want to kind of match the concept a bit more. I think ours might be down a little bit too much, but it should work out just fine for what we're going for. All right, so go ahead and get that set up, and then we're going to proceed to the other features of the face next. All right, so now that we have these eyes in here, we're ready to start moving into the other features of the face, and we're going to start out with the mouth. Now, I'm going to make a few adjustments to the face here just to get us prepped. First thing is I want to take these two vertices here and pull them to be kind of the middle of the eye. That's going to be where those go. And while we're here, this gives us an opportunity to kind of shape the face. For example, we can bring this in to kind of define the cheek form a little bit more. And at this point, you know, my image plane is relatively limited for the face region, but we can start to carve a face out of here regardless. So you can see that ridge bone that forms the skull, and we could exaggerate that a little bit too by pulling these edges out if we wanted to get sort of the cheekbone there a little bit more pronounced. And if you ever look at sunglasses, they kind of have the structure of that. We'll look at that later when we talk about the skull. But something like that gives us a base to start with. Now, from here, we're going to take these four faces that create the mouth, and we're going to extrude these in, again, with an offset. So I'll just hop over here to my toolkit. We'll go ahead and perform an extrude, and I'll use the offset here to pull these in a little bit initially, not too much, basically to the sides of the mouth. And then what we want to do is we want to pull these down to form the lips. Now, I'm going to look at this from a side view. I think that'll be one of the easier views to see this in. And I'm just going to pull this forward in Z, pull this down, and match the lip on the top. And do the same here on the bottom. I'm going to pull this up and match the lip on the bottom there. And we might have to adjust some of these vertices. We'll just pull this back. Remember, I am working with symmetry on, so the nice thing is you don't have to like marquee select in the side view. And there we go. We have lips, sort of. We need to take a bit more time shaping these, and we are going to face one of the most dreaded things at this stage of modeling, which is adding an edge loop down the entire body. So let's get to it. Let's go to the multi-cut tool here. And right in the middle of the lips here, just smack an edge loop in there and then cry yourself to sleep because you got to adjust that across the whole body. Fortunately, it's not too bad, but yeah, we are going to want to take our time with it. So let's go ahead and start working these around here. I'm actually going to start with the top of the head, surprisingly. just space these out to be a little bit more even. If you want to, you could actually use the slide edge for a lot of this. I'd say for a good chunk. I think in the face we're kind of constrained there, but we could slide edge kind of down the whole body here, which is kind of interesting. So let's go ahead and take these side edges here. I'm going to start at the neck area here, because I think that spacing's okay going up from there. Come down to these and down into here, all the way up the back and into the base of the neck here. And I'll just do the mesh tool slide edge and just middle mouse drag that over a little bit to create a bit more even spacing there. That's really all we're doing. And then on the two new edges I added, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to come from the clavicle down here, up into the back of the neck, about here, and just middle mouse drag again, since I have slide edges on still, and just get that to be a little bit more evenly spaced. And I think that's likely all we need to do with those. We could spend a bit more time here rounding these on the torso and, really adjusting them. But I think for the most part, we're going to sculpt that. It's really just about getting the density a little bit more even there. Now, as for the head, though, we can come along this edge here down to, I'd say, maybe right about here, base of the neck, and do another slide edge. So that's going to be, once again, mesh tool slide edge. And use the middle mouse button to just slide that along. And then I'll do the same with the neighboring edge. I feel like that could have slid a little bit more, so I might slide that even more. And then the neighboring edge will take to be about the middle. And we can manually adjust some of the vertices now to make them more even and a little bit less clumpy. And I'm not too worried about the back side of the head and stuff. We're going to get to that as we go. But for the top side of the head, I do want to grab these and start to use them to round the form a bit better. And this should actually be coming out wider here. Now that we have that side area, I think we can do that a little bit better. If I'm not mistaken, we might have one more coming through the head. Not sure quite yet. I can round this area here. In the nose, we have quite a few. I think really just kind of pulling them out so they're not quite as flat is going to be the main benefit here. And then we get down into the mouth. So now we can use these to start shaping the mouth a bit more and adding in the volume form. So this is where coming into the front view can be useful, and we can take a look at this. I'm trying to remember, there's a few edges that we end up adding. We can always adjust them as we go, but I'll just go ahead and get this kind of in place. Surprisingly, it already kind of matches. So, go figure. Down here, it needs a little bit more volume. It's a bit more pouty lipped than what we have there. And running across, I think that's okay. We can check the volumes. You can see here, it's like, yeah, okay, that doesn't look right for lips. They round more. Do the same for the top. Just bring them out a little bit further. All right. And then for these ones, we're ultimately going to push them back, so I'm not really too worried about these. But there we go. Beautiful. Beautiful caveman. Okay, I'm going to save my progress because that was a lot of moving vertices, and if it crashed right now, I would be having a midlife crisis. However, I do want to continue to adjust these. Just keep on pushing those vertices. Make them as beautiful as possible. The wise words of my modeling mentor: needs more round shapes. Ancient wisdom. It's funny how, some things just stick with you from school. I'm sure there was way more life-changing advice than need more round shapes that I got. But yeah, that's what I walked away with. It's kind of like all the things your parents tell you when you're younger, that when you get older, you realize, hey, I should have listened to them. Nope, I was listening to this guy say need more round shapes, but hey, worked out. I have a job. All right, what is next? Next, we need to start building the lips a bit more. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the faces on the inside of the mouth. There should be 8 now that we've added the edge loop. And we're going to extrude them again and scale them together along the vertical axes to start creating lips out of this. So how are we going to do that? Well, we take all of these here, we extrude, and if we pull this out, you can see the effect this has, and we can kind of squish them in. So something like this. This is going to give us a lip shape, and then we have to take some time essentially shaping these. So this is going to be the first lip form that we're going to have. And we can look at this in something like the front view to get a better feel for the lip placement and how this is actually going to go. And this is the area just before it turns in that we're trying to capture here. Now on this side view, we'll see that we're probably a little bit off with this and it needs to come under a bit more. And of course, these back corners are going to need to come back. And this is one of those weird areas where the corners of the mouth kind of fold over on each other, and we might need to make some adjustments here. For example, the mouth width, not quite wide enough. I think I mentioned this, but the corners of the mouth basically come to the center of your eye proportionally. That's something you can look at on people. It's not always the case because the mouth moves a lot, but in a neutral stance, generally speaking, that is where it falls proportionately in a human being. Fun fact is sometimes you can find out if people are using Photoshops and filters on their eyes to make them bigger, because you will notice that they do not meet those proportional standards. So I've noticed that a lot lately with the various shorts out there. Now here I'm matching the side mouth to the actual side mouth in the side view. That's something I haven't done yet. I was just matching it to the front width. But you're going to see this is going to make a big difference. And that's because what happens is the lips kind of pull around the teeth shape in the skull. So we're going to study that in a moment when we get to bones, but that is what happens there. And that might change our perspective of some of these lines in terms of their placement. For example, we might want to round this a bit better. And, you know, this is one of those image planes you just don't have. You can find reference images for something like this angle, but it's a pretty obscure angle. Okay, so take your time with this. You know, make these look as nice as possible. We're going to perform another extrusion on these. I'm trying to think of where I want this to fall, though. I feel like this is more the midline of the lip. So fun thing I can do is I can actually just grab these top ones. I'll keep the corners there, but we could do a little bit of a slide edge on them just to move them up for more space. Do the same down here. And then another extrusion, same way this time, extrude. We're going to do an offset. And for this one, I'm going to switch to the move tool, and I'm just going to push this back like so and scale them down a little bit more. And this is essentially going to be the volume of our lips. So you can see those lips sort of taking shape. I'm going to tuck the corners here a bit more into the corner so these fold over correctly. And this one is going to be essentially where we see the bottom of the lip before we push back. And our mouth is slightly open on this character, so just be aware of that. Even here, I think it is in our viewport, it should be slightly open. I can pull these back relative to here, and you'll see that they sort of sit inside here. So this outer corner is going to be the furthest point out, and the lips are going to start to basically recede inward, right? So what we're doing is sort of creating this inner lip here of our lip. Inner lip. Technical term, just kidding. All right, so let's go ahead and pull that and just keep adjusting these. And like I mentioned, this is one of those areas that gets weird. If it's not perfect, that's okay. We're going to be sculpting this anyway, so you will be revisiting this in ZBrush and making it look like its final form, nice and pretty. So no worries there. Okay, so that gives us some volume there. Now what we're going to start doing is we're going to start pushing these back into the mouth to create the lip form and the mouth cavity. So I'm going to hold Shift this time to extrude, and this is going to start forming the inner lip. So this is going to be kind of the thickness here of the lip, if you will. So we can leave that be, but then we're going to Shift drag again. And this time we're going to do something a lot different. We're going to scale it. So I'm going to scale it out to get some width, and I'm going to start to move it up. I don't think I'm going to scale it up. I think we're actually going to physically come in here and move these edges to start forming what essentially is going to be the interior of the mouth, or what we call the mouth cavity or the mouth pouch. Those are all different terms used for this. And you can see how that starts to give that volume. Now, this is where we would inset some teeth if we were making them, as well as gums and a tongue. We might actually go through the process of adding those. It could be interesting to add a little section on that. But before we get there, let's get this mouth pouch in and to volume. And we're going to want to pull this away from the face a bit. You'll notice it's kind of hugging there. You have to think of the face in motion. So this needs to be behind the lips. So if I turn on wireframe mode, you might be able to see that a little bit better. Maybe not. I feel like wireframe is not so great. There we go. X-ray mode. But you can see how that's pulling out and pulling away. So we're creating that space. I'll do the same thing here. Just select these vertices and pull this out and away. And there you go. You can see how we're starting to get that mouth pouch area. And if we go ahead and smooth, you can see how it's smoothed nicely into those lips. And those lips are holding form fairly well. Once again, yes, he looks like mush. He is supposed to. Until we actually get in and start sculpting him, he will look like he is made out of mud. So just be aware of that. Now from here, we want to further extend the mouth pouch into a mouth cavity. How does that work? Basically, we're just extruding this back again. So we're going to take this and extrude it again. I'm just going to Shift. This time I am going to scale it, though, to be flat. You'll notice the first one I didn't. That was to kind of create that mouth form in the front, just to look nice. Generally, with the mouth cavity, we do start to make it a little bit wider and a little bit taller. So it's good to kind of get that in here. And then what we're going to do is pull it back to about the size of a mouth. It really is approximate here, if I'm going to be honest. It's never really come up to make the mouth the right depth, now I think about it. Well, it's something I've never given much thought to, but hey, we're going to pull that back. And then we're going to start to kind of move this down into a little bit of a throat area, if you will, to kind of simulate how the inside would look. So if you were to open the character's mouth all the way, there'd be a little bit of throat back there. So we're just going to Shift drag this again. I'm going to turn off symmetry for this next part because I need the center to go right here and just scale this in. You can't scale into the center like that easily with symmetry turned on. It's just easier to turn it off. And I might as well leave it off for the moment because the last thing I'm going to do is extrude this once more. But this time we're going to pull this down at an angle here. And that's pretty much it. Can angle that. Now, this is one of those areas where I do consider deleting just because you don't necessarily need these vertices at all. So we could hit delete on those. And if we take a look at the mouth now, you'll see that this creates a throat shape. So if I were to press 3, even if this character were to open their mouth all the way, you would see that it looks like it goes down into that throat, and we don't really need to worry about everything inside of the body there. We're not doing that kind of anatomy class. We're just doing this kind on the outside. So that's going to give us the mouth cavity. So the area within the mouth that the teeth will go. And generally, those are a separate model. I think this lower lip needs some fullness. Make sure you turn back on symmetry if you turned it off like I did before you make some big regretful changes to your model. But I'm just going to take some time to add some more volume to the lip here just to kind of get that in place and looking a little bit nicer. But that is going to be how we create a mouth and mouth cavity. If this were a game character, we might opt for a mouth pouch, in which case we wouldn't necessarily go down like this. We just collapse these into a single triangle in the back. And then using texture maps, we would just kind of imply there's depth to it. So just something to be aware of there. But from here, I would say we just need to continue addressing some of the vertices we've added, maybe evening the spacing on those out so they smooth a little bit nicer, because we kind of did a quick fix on them. Didn't really spend much time there. That looks pretty good. Maybe adjust it a little bit more. Backside looks all right. I don't really have too many issues there. Back of the head's getting a little bit tight, but I'm going to leave that for as we progress forward on the head, because there may be future changes we need to make, so we want to keep that as simple as possible. All right, so let's go ahead and save that. Since we have done some good work, we've added the mouth in there, and we're going to move into some of the other features like the nostril. So as a challenge, what I want you to do is I want you to build your mouth. I want you to go in, use those 4 faces that we have set up in that mouth region to create the lips, and continue extruding those and extruding those and extruding those back into having a mouth cavity, and do your best with it. If you need to, check out the example file that is supplied with this course, and if you get completely stuck, remember you can always use those as a launch point for the next section of the course. All right, so go ahead and give that a shot, and then when you get back, we'll go ahead and add in some nostrils. So at this point, you might notice the face is basically a structure with a bunch of holes in it. We got eye holes, we got mouth holes, and of course we have some nose holes. Now, fortunately, the nose holes are not nearly as much work as everything else. We have some little vertices on the corners of the nose here, these outside ones. These faces are going to be the ones that we are going to use to create this. Now, if you want to envision it a little bit more, you can come in here and use this to kind of create the bridge of the nose. And you'll see, oh, that makes sense now, right? So we can go ahead and move these in a little bit here to give us room for these nostril structures. After that, we're going to select these faces and do an extrude. And as you might have guessed, we're going to use offset for this. So that way we can offset this in. Just be very careful you don't explode your nose like I just did. If you hold down Control as you use this dial, it makes it go in increments of 0.001. If you just use it by its default, it goes in increments of 0.1. So hold down Control for more refined control here, and give this a bit of thickness. Our noses really aren't thin. I am fully giving you permission to pick your nose right now, feel the inner wall of your nose, and kind of get a feel for how thick that skin is. It's actually pretty surprising. So once we have that in place, we're going to perform another extrude and push it in. So we'll just push this up, like so, and you can see we can just follow along the axes there. And with this one, I think it's pretty much fine the way this is. I don't think we need to make an adjustment here too much. We could scale it slightly down if we want to, just to get more of a lip to the nose. And then lastly, we're going to extrude it one more time, shove it all the way up there to the depth of the nose. I'm going to turn on X-ray so you can see this and just push it to the inside here. And you might want to move it inward a little bit here with the move tool. And something that I'm going to do is scale these down. And you have to decide if you want to delete these or not. Now, these faces really aren't going to cause big issues back here if they are here. I've actually had more issues not having them. One of the issues with sculpting is the mesh is relatively thin in terms of what ZBrush considers in this area. So ZBrush does tend to grab these interior areas and pull them a bit. I think because of that, I'm going to leave the end cap on, which will cause them to smooth like this. They're a little bit easier to edit when they're in this form. But, try and pull those away from the nose a bit. And you can even pull them down. They don't have to go in that deep, if I'm going to be honest. But that's pretty much all you need to do for the nose. And what happens there is as we render, light just terminates up there. So it goes to shadow, so you don't see it anyway. But yeah, there you go. That's the nose, nostrils. Pretty straightforward. So those ones are a bit easier. At this point, you do have some extra vertices here, so you can explore using these to kind of create the bridge of the nose here. And you can also explore these interior, exterior ones here for various thicknesses. For example, nostrils. We'll need to find some reference images for that. I don't know if maybe they have them on the Anatomy for Sculptor page for us or not, but you can always look up nostrils and an image browser to get a feel for it. That's really going to come in play when we sculpt more rather than here. But right now, just something like that gives us a good base and something we can use as a launch point for our sculpting mesh. And it's best if your base mesh doesn't have too specific nostrils because the nose varies a lot in characters. That's one of those features that really defines a face. They come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. I believe we're going to be doing a Roman style nose for this character. I'd have to look. Actually, not exactly. This one's pretty generic. Not sure. All right. Anyways, get that nose in there, and yeah, we're going to start to refine these details. So make sure you save a new iteration if you have not done so yet. I know we're getting a lot there, but it's good to have every step in case you do need to go back to a certain one. As a challenge, what I want you to do is go ahead and add in the nostrils to your character, and then we're going to start refining the forms a bit more and add in some of the things like the ear.
For the next part of this lecture series, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can catch it when it goes live. We're going to give you guys the full modeling section out of the course as a preview. And just as a reminder, if you would like to follow along, sign up for our emailing list below to get the image planes I'm using in this demo. And if you want to take the full course, check us out on Udemy. I'll see you in the next video.